The sun dipped low in the sky, casting hues of orange and gold over the open fields of the countryside. Emily Parker gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan tightly, a mix of frustration and apprehension etched on her face. The engine had sputtered to a halt just a mile back, leaving her stranded on a dirt road surrounded by fields of wheat that swayed gently in the breeze. She stepped out of the car, the cool evening air brushing against her skin as she surveyed her surroundings. In the distance, she spotted a small farmhouse with a faint curl of smoke rising from its chimney. With no other option in sight, she decided to walk toward it, hoping to find someone who could help. The farmhouse was rustic yet charming, with its whitewashed walls and wooden shutters. Emily knocked on the door hesitantly, and after a moment, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 40s appeared. He had a weathered face, kind eyes, and hands that spoke of a lifetime of labor. "Evening," the man greeted, his voice deep and steady. "What can I do for you?" "My car broke down just down the road," Emily explained. "I was wondering if you might have some tools or know someone who could help." The man nodded thoughtfully. "I'm Caleb. I can take a look. I'm no mechanic, but I know my way around engines. Come on in while I grab my tools." Emily stepped inside, the warmth of the home enveloping her. The walls were adorned with old photographs, a testament to a family that once thrived here. The smell of freshly baked bread lingered in the air, a stark contrast to her growing unease about being stranded. Caleb returned moments later, carrying a toolbox. "Let's see what we've got," he said, leading the way back to her car. The walk was quiet, with only the sound of crickets and the crunch of their footsteps on the dirt road. Caleb worked diligently, his hands moving with practiced ease. But after an hour, he straightened up and sighed. "Looks like you've got a bigger problem than I can fix here," he admitted. "The alternator's shot. You'll need a tow and a proper garage." Emily's heart sank. "Is there a tow service nearby?" Caleb hesitated. "Closest one is about 20 miles out, and they're closed for the night. You're welcome to stay at my place until morning. It's not much, but it's warm and safe." Emily considered his offer. There was something genuine about Caleb, a sincerity that made her feel she could trust him. "Thank you," she said. "I really appreciate it." Back at the farmhouse, Caleb offered her a bowl of stew and a seat by the fire. They talked about her journey, how she was traveling cross-country for a fresh start after a rough divorce. Caleb listened intently, sharing snippets of his own life as a farmer who had inherited the land from his father. As the evening wore on, Emily noticed Caleb growing quieter. His gaze occasionally drifted toward the barn visible from the kitchen window. Something about his demeanor shifted, a shadow crossing his face. "What's in the barn?" she asked casually, hoping to lighten the mood. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Just tools and old equipment," he replied curtly, avoiding her eyes. The vague answer piqued Emily's curiosity. Later that night, while Caleb was asleep, she found herself drawn to the barn. The moonlight illuminated the weathered structure as she approached, her steps tentative yet determined. The large doors creaked as she pushed them open, revealing rows of farming tools and machinery. But something else caught her eye, a section of the barn cordoned off with a heavy tarp. Emily's heart raced as she pulled it back, revealing a makeshift workshop filled with intricate sculptures made from metal and wood. Each piece was hauntingly beautiful yet carried an air of melancholy. In the center of the room stood a life-sized sculpture of a woman, her expression frozen in anguish. Emily gasped, the sight both mesmerizing and unsettling. She turned to leave, only to find Caleb standing in the doorway, his face a mask of anguish and vulnerability. "I told you it was just tools," he said softly, his voice laced with pain. "I'm sorry," Emily stammered. "I didn't mean to intrude. They're incredible. Why do you hide them?" Caleb's shoulders sagged as he stepped inside. "They're not just sculptures," he said. "They're memories. Each piece represents someone I've lost. My wife, my daughter, friends who've moved on or passed away. This barn is my sanctuary, a place where I can keep them close." Emily's heart ached for him. "They're beautiful," she said sincerely. "You have an incredible gift." Caleb shook his head. "They're my way of coping. Sharing them feels too raw, too personal." For the first time, Emily understood the weight Caleb carried. She reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Art has a way of connecting people," she said gently. "Maybe sharing these could help you heal." The two spent the rest of the night talking in the barn, their conversation weaving a tapestry of loss, resilience, and hope. By morning, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose, inspired by Caleb's story and his art. When she left the farmhouse later that day, she carried more than just the memory of a kind farmer who helped her. She carried the lessons of vulnerability and the courage to embrace her own pain. Caleb, in turn, found a confidant in Emily, someone who saw the beauty in his grief and encouraged him to share it with the world. Years later, Emily would return to the farmhouse, this time not as a stranded traveler but as a friend. And in the barn, Caleb's once-hidden sculptures would stand proudly, admired by visitors who found solace and inspiration in his creations, a testament to the transformative power of art and human connection. Emily couldn't get Caleb's sculptures out of her mind. As she drove away, her repaired car humming steadily along the road, the haunting beauty of his work stayed with her. The expressions carved into the faces, the raw emotion embedded in each piece, it was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was as though Caleb had taken the essence of his grief and transformed it into something both devastating and beautiful. Weeks passed, and Emily found herself unable to shake the memory of that night. She was settling into her new life in the small coastal town she had chosen for her fresh start. She had a job at a local bookstore, an apartment overlooking the ocean, and a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. But Caleb and his art lingered at the edges of her thoughts. One afternoon, as she organized books on the shop shelves, an idea struck her. She grabbed her phone and called Caleb. "Caleb," she said when he answered, his voice gruff but warm on the other end. "I've been thinking about your sculptures." There was a pause. "What about them?" he asked cautiously. "I think you should share them with the world," Emily said. "I know you said it's personal, but art like yours has the power to move people, to make them feel understood. It helped me, Caleb. I think it could help others too." Caleb sighed heavily. "I don't know, Emily. That barn is my safe place. I'm not sure I'm ready to open it up to strangers." Emily didn't press him further, but the seed had been planted. Over the next few weeks, she began to reach out to local art galleries and community organizations. She sent photos of Caleb's work, the one she had snapped that night in the barn with his reluctant permission, and explained the story behind the pieces. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. One day, she called Caleb again. "There's a gallery in town that's interested," she told him. "They want to host an exhibition of your work. They'll handle everything, the setup, the promotion. All you have to do is say yes." Caleb was silent for a long moment. "I don't know, Emily," he said finally. "It's not just about showing the pieces. It's about opening up parts of myself I've kept hidden for years." "I understand," Emily said gently. "But maybe opening up is the next step in your healing. You don't have to do it alone. I'll be with you every step of the way." After another long pause, Caleb finally agreed. The preparations for the exhibition were both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. Caleb transported his sculptures to the gallery in the small coastal town where Emily lived. As the opening night approached, his anxiety grew. But Emily was there, encouraging him, reminding him of the impact his work could have. When the night of the exhibition arrived, Caleb stood in the corner of the gallery, his hands clenched nervously as people began to filter in. Emily stayed by his side, offering quiet reassurance. As visitors moved through the space, the reactions were immediate and profound. Some stood silently, their eyes glistening with tears. Others whispered to each other, marveling at the depth of emotion captured in the pieces. One woman approached Caleb, her voice trembling. "Your work, it speaks to me in a way I can't explain. I lost my husband last year, and seeing these sculptures, it feels like you've given shape to my grief." Caleb nodded, his throat tight with emotion. For the first time, he saw his art through the eyes of others, not just as an outlet for his own pain, but as a source of comfort and connection for those who saw it. By the end of the evening, Caleb felt something shift within him. The weight of his grief was still there, but it was lighter somehow, shared among those who had seen and felt the depth of his work. In the weeks that followed, Caleb's sculptures gained recognition beyond the small gallery. News of the exhibition spread, and other galleries expressed interest in showcasing his work. Caleb, with Emily's unwavering support, began to embrace the idea of sharing his art with the world. Through this journey, Emily and Caleb grew closer, their bond deepening with each shared triumph and vulnerability. Emily found strength in Caleb's resilience, and Caleb found hope in Emily's unyielding belief in him. Years later, Caleb's sculptures would be known far and wide, each piece carrying the story of a man who turned his pain into beauty and a woman who reminded him of the power of connection. And through it all, their friendship remained a testament to the transformative power of kindness, trust, and the courage to face the shadows of the past together. As Caleb's sculptures gained recognition, his life began to shift in ways he never imagined. Invitations to exhibit his work came from cities he had only read about. Museums and private collectors expressed interest, but Caleb remained deeply connected to the emotional roots of his creations. For him, it wasn't about fame or wealth. It was about the stories behind each piece and the connections they fostered. Emily was a constant source of support, helping him navigate this new chapter. She encouraged him to stay true to himself and his work, often reminding him of the night he first shared his barn secret with her. Their friendship deepened into something more profound, though neither of them rushed to define it. They understood each other in a way words often failed to express. One day, Caleb received an invitation from a prestigious art festival in New York City. It was a chance to showcase his work on an international stage. While the opportunity excited him, it also brought a wave of anxiety. The thought of leaving his quiet, familiar life for the bustling energy of the city felt overwhelming. "You have to go," Emily said when Caleb confided in her. "This is your chance to share your story with the world. I'll be right there with you." Reluctantly, Caleb agreed. They spent weeks preparing for the trip, carefully packing the sculptures and planning the journey. When they finally arrived in New York, Caleb was overwhelmed by the towering skyscrapers, the noise, and the sheer energy of the city. But Emily's presence grounded him. The festival was unlike anything Caleb had ever experienced. His sculptures were displayed in a grand gallery, surrounded by other incredible works from artists around the world. On the opening night, the room buzzed with excitement. Critics, collectors, and art enthusiasts marveled at Caleb's creations, their reactions ranging from tears to awe. One particular encounter stood out. A young man in his 20s approached Caleb, his hands trembling as he held a small notebook. "Your work, it saved my life," the man said, his voice breaking. "I lost my brother last year, and I've been drowning in grief. Seeing your sculptures made me feel understood, like I wasn't alone." Caleb was deeply moved. He placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "You're not alone," he said. "Grief is heavy, but sharing it makes it lighter. Thank you for telling me this. It means more than you know." The festival was a resounding success. Caleb received offers for solo exhibitions, interviews, and even a book deal to document his journey and art. But more than the accolades, it was the personal connections that mattered most to him. Each story he heard from those touched by his work reinforced his belief in the power of vulnerability and expression. Back in the quiet countryside, life resumed its steady rhythm. Caleb continued to create, inspired not only by his own experiences but by the stories of others. Emily, too, found her path evolving. She began writing a memoir about their shared journey, weaving her perspective with Caleb's, capturing the essence of their friendship and the transformative power of art. One evening, as they sat on Caleb's porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Emily turned to him. "Do you ever think about how different life might have been if my car hadn't broken down that night?" Caleb chuckled softly. "All the time. It's funny how the worst moments can lead to the best things." They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of their shared experiences settling around them like a warm blanket. In each other, they had found not just a friend but a partner in navigating the complexities of life, loss, and healing. As the years went on, Caleb's barn remained a sanctuary, not just for him, but for those who visited to see where his journey began. It became a place of inspiration, a reminder that even in the face of sorrow, beauty could emerge. And through it all, Caleb and Emily stood side by side, proof that even the most unexpected connections could change lives forever.